Hi, everyone, and welcome to Zero to Empire. I have Conrad Sanchez, and he is an EMS trainer, and he's going to be talking about his journey throughout going into EMS and how he got started and everything else. So, Conrad, how did you actually inspire you to launch the EMS fitness, and what actually got you started with all of that?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me. And yeah, so EMS, I stumbled upon it in 2019. The technology has been around since 2012, but it was mostly in Europe. In the US, it didn't get FDA clearance until 2018. And I got into it through a French investor that wanted to recreate a franchise that he owned in Brazil in the US, and he hired me as the head trainer.
That's great. And for everyone that doesn't know what EMS stands for, what is that?
Yeah, so EMS is short for electrical muscle stimulation. So it's an acronym for electrical muscle stimulation, which itself is short for whole body electrical muscle stimulation. There's a distinction between EMS, which usually has been used in physical therapy settings for rehab to avoid muscle atrophy. And that is localized, usually around one or two joints. But then there's whole body electrical muscle stimulation, so WBEMS, which is what I focus on, which is a fitness modality to train the whole body within 20 minutes. 20 minutes equates to about 2 hours of weightlifting.
Wow. Yeah. 20 minutes is a lot more time effective than 2 hours for sure. So that's awesome that this technology is actually out there. And what actually introduced you first to it? And how did you capture that interest of yours?
So initially, I had been working for the past 16 years, mostly with people with diabetes, chronic conditions, injuries, pains, aches. And I was always looking for ways to better train them more effectively. Usually these populations require low impact exercises, but low impact usually means also low intensity. It doesn't have to be, but mostly it does. And I needed to train them with high intensity, but low impact. And then in addition to this, EMS allows to do it in a short time. So it was a perfect combination. It's actually the only thing in the fitness industry that allows the combination of all three things of low impact, intense, and short duration.
That's awesome. And how has being one of the only few EMS experts in the US actually shaped your perspective on the fitness industry?
So, I mean, the EMS, I was one of the very early adapters here in the US. And I know that in the US, there's only maybe a handful of other trainers that have as much knowledge and experience as I do. I went on a crusade of trying to get as much education as possible, reading research studies, but also getting educated by the different manufacturers. There's only a handful of manufacturers that provide education in the US, and I've gotten education from all of them. And from that standpoint, my goal is to, one, continue providing service to my clients, but two, to give education, train other trainers to become better EMS providers, because not every EMS manufacturer provides the education or make the trainers that buy the equipment take the education. And so I'm trying to fill that gap of knowledge and experience that I've amassed over the years to try to give it back to other trainers that want to get into the field.
That's great to hear. And when it actually comes to the challenges you've faced in building and scaling your EMS education workshops, like how are you overcoming them?
So there's two challenges. One is that not a lot of people know about EMS altogether. In the fitness world, more and more trainers have heard of it, but don't really know much about it. And so let alone trainers that get into it. So there's a scarcity of trainers that want to get into EMS because either they don't know about it or barely have heard of it. And then the trainers that have heard of it and are getting started with EMS, sometimes they feel like they don't need education. And so there's two obstacles there to overcome. How am I overcoming them? One is just more like podcasts, right? Like podcast interviews, articles. I write my own blogs. So just spreading the information about EMS, that it exists and what the benefits are. And secondly, just trying to network network through trainers, companies that want to start introducing EMS. Some Pilates studios are thinking of adding EMS. So this is where I'm trying to give the education and try to network.
That's awesome. And when it actually comes to your long-term vision of the Conrad EMS Fitness, how do you actually balance the one-on-one trainings that you offer as well as scaling your educational services?
With patience, a lot of patience, a lot of dedication and time. So putting in the hours to create. So I'm developing an academy online so that people can take the education whenever they want, not just through actual live workshops. And that just takes a lot of time and research and referencing all the everything that I'm saying, that it's evidence-based. And on the other side, I mean, my clients, I schedule them. For the most part, they're very consistent with their times and dates. But it's a juggle. I mean, I'm sure everybody that is an entrepreneur has to wear different hats and juggle them when they can.
Definitely. And when it actually comes to those one-on-one sessions, when you're in person with them, what does it look like when you're bringing this technology to them?
Yeah, so I bring a suit. So it's a two-part suit. It's a vest and pants, for lack of a better word. It's more like a straps for the legs, and it has armbands. And I bring an iPad and a battery, and I have to wet the suit. Currently, I use a suit that needs wetting. If you don't wet the suit, the electricity doesn't go through as much, and it feels a little painful. So you have to wet the suit. So bring a water jug that I I warm up the water for the VIP clients only. But I warm up the water. I wet the suit. I put it on. It takes about a minute and a half to 2 minutes to suit up a person, and then we're good to go. And the workout looks like very much like any other workout, squats. So I use a lot of regular strength training principles. So big lifts, bench press, squats, deadlifts, etc. Except I don't need any equipment. The stimulation is provided by the suit. If I crank up the suit, I use usually 3 to 5 pounds in order to guide the movement. It's easier to do a bicep curl with something in your hand than without it. And then from there, I give them as an intense of a workout as they can handle.
Yeah, that's very cool that you can actually do that. And it's awesome. The suit can actually do that for you. And that's really unique. So when it actually comes to its scaling and going to major gyms like Equinox to adopt EMS, how are you preparing for that opportunity? And what do you think would take for it to happen?
Yeah, I mean, only in these big box gyms usually will go through a lot of testing and making sure it's something profitable, and so it takes time. But my personal stance is to make myself as big of an expert as I can in order to be in the talks if any of these gyms, whether it's Equinox or any other Lifetime, if they decide to introduce EMS, they're going to look for, okay, who's an authority in this field, and hopefully they can find me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you're definitely a key component of the EMS industry. So that's awesome that you're on the podcast and you're spreading this information, because I honestly had no idea anything about this. And I've been in fitness for many years. So it's really cool to see this perspective and technology. So where do you actually see your business in 5 years, and how do you plan on making your goals a reality?
Work and dedication. I don't think there's any way around that, but a lot of it also stems on taking the opportunity, like when an opportunity presents itself, like not fumbling it, and so making sure you're ready and ready at all moments. Continue doing what I'm doing, which is basically networking, providing blogs, providing the education, creating workshops, and then continue to train my clients.
That's awesome to hear. And what kind of advice would you give to fitness entrepreneurs trying to introduce new technologies to a skeptical and like robust market?
I would say the first step is knowledge. Like get as much education as you can, especially for technology like this that requires, it adds a whole layer of principles and training parameters. that is not necessarily so easy to plug and play. There is some thought that that needs to be there in order to plan the workouts a little better and make sure that it makes sense with training principles. But so education, knowledge, try to get a mentor. I think that's a very common advice. And try to get a mentor. I'm happy to be a mentor for any trainer that wants to get into EMS. But mentoring, knowledge, and then do it yourself. Like train yourself, train some clients, get some guinea pigs so that you can make mistakes, and then go from there.
Yeah, definitely just have to get started and go from there and see what happens. And so, what do you actually enjoy the most about your work, and how does it actually align with your personal passions and values?
So, for me, like I said, my niche had always been training special populations, as we call them in the fitness world. These populations that, sure, everybody wants to lose 5-10 pounds, but it's a different story when you have a knee injury, a shoulder impingement, and you just got diagnosed with diabetes. You require a trainer that has a lot more knowledge than just a junior trainer that just got their certification. And for me, it has always been very fulfilling to train people where I could make the most difference. When I have seen people that were in their 80s and they could barely walk, and then all of a sudden they're squatting, all of a sudden they're back to hiking, they're enjoying their time with their grandkids, like that is very fulfilling. And to see them like basically get a second win in their life is very, very like it fills me inside, and it makes a huge difference to them. And that's what I strive for in my career.
That's great to hear, and that's awesome. You're making such a great impact on everyone. Do you have any particular stories of any clients in the past or current clients that have actually made a big impact to the EMS?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has gotten results and body composition results, and that's all great. But I've had people that like wanted to lose 5 pounds and they didn't have any particular injuries or so, at least not when I started training them. They didn't tell me about their pains and aches. They were like, no injuries. Okay. But then after a couple months of training, they were like, you know what? Like I actually had a lot of pain and ache from like, this was a permanent makeup tattoo artist that like works hunched over and with their hands a lot. And after a couple months, she told me like, oh, I realized that I don't have these pains anymore. Like I would go to bed after a long day of work and my forearms hurt, everything hurt. And since we've been training, like nothing hurts. And I was like, that's amazing. Like you never told me that, and that you were in pain first, but I'm glad that indirectly this helped you. That's examples like that. There's plenty, but I have another example. I'm training a couple. They're 80 and 77 years old. And after a couple months of training them, they told me they had to do a stress test for their heart, and their results were better than 2 years prior. So when they were younger and they got this stress test, their results were worse than now after a couple months of training 2 years later. And I want to say that the strength training, like what I do is very similar to strength training. I did not focus at all on cardio, and yet their heart results were better than 2 years ago. So it shows that because the workout is intense, and regardless of how short it is an intense workout. It is low impact. So anybody that's 80 or 77 years old can do it, and they're still going to get a lot of benefits from it.
Yeah, that's impressive. And I'm glad you're changing these people's lives, especially them at that age. And it's cool that they were able to actually access the EMS technology. So what do you think is actually preventing the fitness industry from actually having it currently right now?
So there's technology involved. It is expensive. There's an education component. And so there's a lot of training involved. So it's not an easy to implement, like, let's say a TRX, right? Like TRX came out. It's not that expensive. It's a $200 piece of equipment. You see it, sure, you can get education to learn certain exercises and stuff, but for the most part, you can sort of like you play around with it an afternoon and you're like, okay, I get it. I know what this is. EMS is not the same. EMS requires a lot of education, a lot of experience. experience manipulating the stimulation, making sure that you're not hurting the person, that you're checking in with them enough, and then the technology itself is costly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I appreciate all your insight when it comes to the EMS technology. It's very cool. I never knew anything about this before speaking to you, and I actually want to give it a shot. I really hope it comes to the Colorado area very soon. If it's not here right now, I want to go look into it more.
I think there's a person in Aspen for sure, and maybe in Denver as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean Aspen's pretty far, but yeah, Denver's a good idea. Awesome. Where can people reach out to you if they want to do some workouts with you or do some business with you, if they're a trainer or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm based in LA. If you want to work with me directly as a one-on-one for personal training and EMS personal training, my website is conrademsfitness.com. So very simple. Instagram is just at Conrad Fitness. Same on TikTok. And for G Education and so same thing, conrademsfitness.com. If you want, if you're a trainer that is looking for education, you can find me online as well.
Yeah, go check him out. Go get his one-on-one sessions. If you're living in the LA area, it'd be really unique and also very effective. And for everyone watching, thanks so much. And I'll see everyone in the next episode of Zero to Empire.
Thank you.